The substance kind of caught me off guard when you suggested this. What I knew about this was that I believe it's an independent film, and I knew that it was going to be gory. And I do remember seeing the trailer and being grossed out, not by the suggestion of gore, but by Dennis Quaid eating shrimp. It was fucking disgusting, and it was absolutely disgusting in the movie. I haven't had time to look up the director, Coralie Fargeat, I think.
Yep.
Probably pronounce that differently. I assume she's French.
She's French.
Okay. Demi Moore, come back for her. Margaret Qualley, who is Andie MacDowell, I believe her daughter. And Margaret was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I do remember that. She had a few scenes with Brad Pitt. She was good. And I think she was in a movie called Poor Things with Emma Stone. But other than that, she's kind of a newcomer. And Dennis Quaid.
I have Poor Things halfway finished right now. I have it halfway finished.
Oh, really? I really enjoyed that one. Man, I look forward to hearing what you think about that. And I won't go down the list of actors, but there's also Dennis Quaid in this. I mentioned him eating shrimp, which again is completely disgusting. I think it may be the most disgusting part of the movie for me. But originally Ray Liotta was cast in that role, but he passed away a couple years back. So obviously they had to find a new actor, and they did. Yeah, I'm going to start this off and just say how unique I thought this was. It's not what I expected. I think the visuals were really impressive. I haven't looked at the budget and how much they had to work with here, but again, I think it was an independent movie, and the fact that if the budget was moderate, which I'm assuming in comparison to a lot of Hollywood stuff, it was probably pretty moderate. This movie, for me, it was important, I think, to look at the material, and I think especially where beauty standards are now. And I think just anyone, not just females. I understand there's a female lead in this, and she's dealing with aging and losing her identity, which is so caught up in how she looks and how she's perceived by the public, and dealing with basically any flaws that come with age, which we're all immune to. Father Time is undefeated. And but men can relate to this as well. Whether you're gaining weight uncontrollably, you're getting wrinkles, going gray, losing your hair, whatever. I mean, the list goes on for this kind of shit that most people deal with. But if you have the option to use a drug that will make you feel like the best version of yourself, the question lies, would you take that plunge? Would you do it? Obviously, she doesn't understand the scope of the repercussions that are going to come from this substance they're referring to, but so much of her identity is caught up in her appearance. And I think, especially living in Vegas, working in Vegas, I am around that all the time. I see it. And it's kind of sad when you think about it, because you do realize that all of these people are going to age. They're going to, come to that point where they're not happy with what they see in the mirror. They may not be now, but inevitably it's going to happen. And how do you come to terms with that? What do you do? How do you move forward? How do you find happiness and peace in your life around the superficial aspects of being a person in a city like this? But yeah, man, it's a fucking weird movie. It really is. And I'll give this movie a lot of props up until maybe the last 10 minutes. And then it was just, I feel like they could have gone a different direction that would have been more satisfying for me. But it really, really fell off at the end. And it was absurd. It was over the top. I don't want to spoil too much. You may. But it was fucking crazy, this movie. It was just wild. The performances were really good. I think Demi Moore was outstanding in this. I did enjoy it. I was entertained. But again, the end of the movie was just fucking, it was just a bit much for me. Even with a movie with the source material, I think you could have gone a different direction. I'm not really sure what direction would have been better. Haven't had that much time to kind of sit and think about what I would have preferred to have seen. But overall, I thought it was really nice. What'd you think of this? I'm really excited to hear what you think, man, because I have no fucking clue.
It's funny because then you'll have takes like this, and I'm like, all right, so we're aligned. We're hitting every beat, and then like lost like Nosferatu, so I'll never understand it. Anyway, this movie, I think I have some notes. I wish I'd do more chronological. I have like random notes. First of all, she has excellent skin for 62, unless it was really brushed up.
She really does, man. She looks great. Yeah,
I was like, damn, those. I mean, her body is a 62. I mean, no, it's not, but the skin is nice. Anyway, the first scene was from The Shining, the music and the hallway, and they had the twins at the end. That's exactly lifted up from The Shining. They did a lot of throwbacks. This movie started off, I was getting to like perfection levels. The shots were really good. And then they did the same thing I told you, which is not impressive, that Blink Twice did. Like, yeah, close-up shots or clean shots where the resolution's perfect and the scene is pristine. There's no fuzziness. There's no wasted, background, imagery. It's like a person's face and like a pink background. Like,
yeah,
that's interesting cinematography, and it was done really well. And they kept doing it. They just kept on doing it and doing it and doing it, like showing taking that same shot and making that kind of their thing. So the visuals were good. They were just a bit heavy-handed. They kept playing that. So the performances were pretty good. I don't say excellent. I like Qualley or Qualley, whatever, better than Demi Moore. I have just personal things with Demi Moore. I think there's rumors. I don't remember. I think there was a quote. She said something like, I'm feeling Golden Lion at the Cannes. And I know that's taking a movie. It's not reviewing the movies in person, but like, I don't know. There's something histrionic about it all with her. I feel like this was her movie and she wanted to be her movie, something like that. But the point I'm making at is, it wasn't like the hardest performance ever. I know there's physical comedy and physical acting and whatnot. There wasn't a lot of dialogue or complexity of emotions necessarily to like make an exceptional performance. So it's hard for me to like. It'd be like giving like an Oscar to something that was like a non-speaking movie or something like that. Not a great analogy, but there's sometimes where I'm like, I want you to earn that Oscar. Like Gone Girl, like where she has a lot of. Which she didn't get the Oscar, like a lot of dialogue, a lot of nuance. So anyway, I digress. Performances were good. It was very pretty. It had a theme. Again, it followed the rules. It started off, down the rabbit hole. I don't think they did a good setup of Demi Moore. If she would have been kind of a bitch, then you would have felt okay with how they finished her off, right? But they didn't do that. And then I know it becomes a cautionary tale. It's very like Grimm's. If you look at like the Grimm's tales, they're actually really like that. Like the innocent person still like suffers horrible fate. The Little Mermaid original story, the Little Mermaid doesn't get the prince and kills herself by like smashing herself against some rocks. It's the original Little Mermaid.
Jesus, I didn't know that.
Snow White, she's raped when she's sleeping. It's not just a kiss, he rapes her. So there's a lot of like traditional fairy tales, if you get into them, are pretty dark. They do punish the good, right? But I don't like that in my stories. Sorry. Like I like the scary movie thing. It's kind of is scary movie. Scary. There are rules. Generally speaking, you don't eviscerate or kill the innocent, right? The truly innocent. They get something like that. Like the bad, the drugs, the sex, the corruption. They're allowed to be targeted. You don't feel so bad, right? But the end, they really fucking did a number on like this character. There's a movie I watched. I couldn't finish it, and it really frustrated me. And one of the reviews said something like, you feel bad for like the characters, not the actors, the characters, but that someone would write something to do this to your characters, right? And at the end, that's what I felt like. I'm like, why would you put them through this perplexing like body horror pain? Anyway, I should stay in order. It started out really well. I was very high. I was like in the 9s in my head. I thought the cinematography was great. The story was the theme. I was glued to it. Then the middle, it just kind of like lost it. It's like, okay, so where are we going with this? I read a lot of reviews like I always do because I always like seeing other opinions putting together. And I saw one interesting thing, which kind of like the screenwriter in me made it make sense. It was missing a third party. You got the people giving the drugs and her, which is basically the two parties. I know there's like the company employing her. It needed another party involved, right? Like someone she would either talk to or someone else that was like an actual enemy that becomes the enemy, something. It needed a third party, I feel like, and it didn't have that. I think they missed the mark by, yes, I know there's a million ways to argue it, just like there was for the movie Enemy, but the way they shot it, these were two separate people. I understand they're the same person and we're one. They shot it as two separate people. There was never a moment even, which I thought they would do the classic, she looks in the mirror and sees a reflection of the girl and they talk to each other. Yeah. I thought they would do that shot for sure. Some might say good the avoided cliche, but no, because the cliche would have given you that connecting part. It really felt like Demi Moore just got gypped. It would have been better if it's like, you're doing this to yourself. Make that realization. So have the argument yourself, but really realize you are. They never really interacted much. So I thought they could have done something with that, and they didn't. And then, of course, this isn't hard to see. We didn't have much diversity. You know why? Because it didn't want to have diversity. Why? Because who is the ultimate evil in this world?
Gotcha.
My friend Matt.
Yeah, of course.
Who is it?
The white man.
It's the white man.
Yeah.
In the scene in the hallway, the old white men.
Yeah.
Just, they're evil, man. Indians, Asians, Black, Hispanic, no. They never take advantage of women. Stop. I won't hear it on my watch. It's only old white men. That's it. And the guy's name was Harvey, by the way. He was Jewish, not white. Anyway, yeah, his name was Harvey, not by accident. Right. So I thought about it, and I told you the only part in the Batman that I even thought was even slightly redeemable was that scene that took me for like, you know, for a loop when they're talking about the Russian girl that was involved with the mobster that gets killed. And then at one point he says something like, you know, she was involved with bad dudes. Like, you know, what's the deal? Like, she knew what she signed up for, right? Obviously, I shouldn't have to qualify this. Doing horrible things to women or whatever is horrible. Don't ever do it. But it does make me think about the whole favors thing, right? Like, some people want it that way. They know I'm getting into this industry and there's some things I'm going to have to do to get what I want, willingly, by the way, right? And so I wish I would have been more even, like, okay, if the bad white guys are the ones taking advantage of you, you're also taking advantage yourself, right? Because you want to perpetuate something. That's your evil. I don't think they delivered that well. I think they could have if they made her a little bit more evil. Instead, it felt like, you know, a woman who was nice, you know, she finished her like workout routine in the first scene and had a good career. And, she got old and she feels bad about it. And she was like, I want to do better for this. And then her life ended. There wasn't a lot of, I don't know. I feel there's a better way of delivering it to make me get more invested, I guess. Maybe I think I'm missing the investment.
Huh. Interesting. I think it worked the opposite for me because I think this brings an element of heartbreak into it. And you see someone that you like and you can kind of relate to, and then they just have an epic downfall that you see as being easily avoidable, but they can't do it because they're too caught up in their image. And again, I think that's incredibly relatable.
If they would have made it one person, right? If like,
oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, like if you would have been like she had moments where she's like, she would hit herself and say, stop doing it, but you didn't get an interaction scene. You didn't get the feeling. Like if it would have been like, you're really doing this to yourself, sweetheart. Like, come on, you're doing this to yourself. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. I don't feel they drove that home well.
Yeah.
I don't feel they did.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me also, it was up there, the score at the beginning. But the one thing I remember thinking initially was, why do they have to have the younger version come out of her back like that? And they're constantly doing this to one another, and they have to kind of care for one another. I know physically, I know what their point is there, but I would have liked to have seen just that transformation as soon as she injects, and then she's young and it's only going to last a certain amount of time and she has to continue to do it. But again, this is going to snowball and it's going to get out of control somehow. And that way you're more tied up emotionally into the two. But then you take away that epic fight scene, which I'm sure was in the script, and they had to have that. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was interesting. It was an interesting swing what they did with having that, because you've never seen it before. I mean, we've seen somebody wakes up like big Tom Hanks and probably a lot of other movies where they're just the younger version of themselves, and then they eventually are going to go back to the older version, and they're enjoying their youth and their prosperity. So they just wanted to diverge from that kind of trope or that typical scenario that's been seen many, many times.
Yeah, by separating the characters, you make it seem like she had no free will. That's why I don't like it.
Okay.
Because if you make it, you really do know you're doing it to yourself, then you know you're willingly doing this. Instead, they made a villain out of herself as two separate entities, not one. They made it like, okay, poor girl pushed the red button and shouldn't have, and now the evil is going to screw her up. Like, there's no, you're doing it. I want to be like, no, you keep pushing the red button. You keep pushing the red button, and you're fantasizing there's some other enemy. You're the enemy, and you're also the hero. In each of us, teenagers at war. That's what I wish they would have done. Instead, you take away the agency of the person, and now it's like, oh, poor girl, she's being, beaten to hell and like taken advantage of by not her, the other girl, not herself, the other girl.
Yeah,
it's another girl, not herself. And thematically, it works better, I feel, when you're like, you're doing this. Because then, of course, what was it? Eating food, smoking cigarettes, doing drugs, alcohol, then it's like you're doing it to yourself. And that's what I hate when people say, like, alcohol, like, oh, it's a disease. It's not me. When I take a sip, it's someone else. It's someone else. I'm like, okay, I understand it can be intense. I really do. I get what you mean, but it is you, right? It's you. If you take away agency, then you take away responsibility. And I felt like they did it too much by separating them, the way they presented it.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think they took a big swing here, and it's a really interesting way to look at the younger version of yourself completely hating and despising and wanting to kill what the older version of yourself represents. And she sees it, case in point, right in front of herself, and she can't take it. It's a terrifying thing to her. I'm sure for a long time, when it started to become a reality slowly, aging is probably her biggest fear in the world. And this is just a really interesting, unique way to represent that. And again, I just think they took a risk here. And you got to respect that. But again, I stand by what they did here. I think it was super entertaining and engaging. It was shot so interestingly, and it was really easy to watch, but it made you feel uncomfortable at the same time. And yeah, it was well done in 2 hours and 21 minutes. And I'm just reading now, it's approximately $17.5 million budget, which isn't much. It's made almost $80 million. So it's done well considering. Yeah, and I guess the genre you would put this in, I'm reading, is body horror.
Yeah, it's body horror.
Body horror, even potentially a dark comedy, which I didn't get too much comedy in here. I mean, maybe with the over-the-top shit at the end and the just that craziness that was happening, if that's what tickles your fancy. I don't know. Not really for me. It was just sort of like, ugh, what the fuck?
Yeah, so a couple of things there. Body horror is a subgenre. I don't like body horror. I knew it was a body horror walking into it.
What's another body horror movie? Do you know?
Anything made by the guy that the Toxic Avengers, the Toxic Crusader.
Oh, right. Okay, so this is like big.
The Blob,
horror.
The Fly.
Sure.
The Blob, The Fly, all that stuff. It's a whole. It's by Cronenberg, so he does all this weird.
Cronenberg. Yes.
Yeah,
this is very Cronenberg.
She said she got influence from that. It's not lost on me what you're saying. I put here, she throws away her lesser self and hides it in shame. I get the parallels. I'm not going to give anything bad because, like I said, I think it was, I told you the Cloud Atlas, I love Ebert's review. He said it was the most ambitious movie ever made, right? Mm. This movie was very ambitious. And the only reason it's not going to get a better score for me is the same reason you did and the same reason every fucking damn review below 8 on IMDb says, come on, those last 10 to 20 minutes, yeah, come on. They went heavy-handed, right? She starts bleeding, and shooting out the audience because the blood is on your hands too for exploiting me. She wasn't really exploited; she did it willingly, which I get. Well, it's a part of it. She did it herself. That explanation, the agency part of it, wasn't done very well. Man, the middle kind of dragged a bit, but the end, it could have had an interesting way of finishing and gotten a really great score. Yeah. But instead, I'm like, what? You saw the checkbox of body horror and thought, how can I make this the most disgusting? Punish my character like in agony and pain and like body parts blowing. Like, come on. I don't know. I mean, you disagree, but I think there's no Nosferatu to do with the sex. Like, but hold on, but sex. Like, taking a minute, but sex. Yeah, but she ends it by having, a 24-hour orgy with the fucking vampire and then dies in the... Yeah. They did that with this. Like, okay, yeah, like her body, like, blows up. It's disgusting.
It was pretty rough. How did you have a chance to come up with something? Were you inspired? Did you say, I'd like to have seen it in this way?
I'm glad you asked that. I put the third act. It feels like the third act was directed by someone entirely different, which I agree. Like, I think someone else did. It feels like someone else was brought in and said, "Yeah, all right, you finish this. Come on, Cronenberg, you finish this one." And I can't think of any now. I have to think long. What about you? How else could you have done it? You think?
I don't know. I think a little more of an emotional wrap up, a slow fade away into eventual death. But the over the top spraying the audience and crazy shit. I thought about this. It could have been her imagination, this whole thing, because she comes back, she puts the dress on, she has her old young beautiful face like a cutout over the hideousness that's underneath it. Maybe this is all in her imagination in some fucked up weird way.
I did have one. They were on the track of saving this. Here's what they thought they would do. I think thematically they missed the mark. That's all I can say. Yeah. Thematically, they had a theme, but it didn't stay consistent. I don't know how to phrase it. Something went off there for my take. Anyway, when she came and she was all blobby-like, and the long hallway people were cheering her on, and she had the thing plastered on her face. Yeah. I thought they were going to finish it that way, and the analogy, or the, I guess, allegory or theme or whatever the right word is, would have been, hey, these people really don't care about you, and people will turn a blind eye as long as you're just entertaining them, right? Like, they don't even care. I thought they were going for like a... People are so, absent of any kind of care for another person. They don't even like recognize anything's different. They're like, well, she got a pretty face plastered on. Go ahead. Yeah, right. I thought they were doing that. I didn't realize that was I thought she was going to walk down. Everyone was just going to accept it. And then she'd go perform on stage. Everyone would be like, great. And she would kind of die that, like not die. She would finish that way. Like this revolting blob that puts on a smiling face. Ha ha ha. See, she puts it on, but it's not real. I thought they might do something like that. And I was like, okay. That could be something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to say. Such an extreme source material, and they just went over the top extreme at the end. But yeah, it didn't leave me completely unsatisfied. I was just more kind of like, what the fuck? Like, wow. And then her face being on top of her Hollywood Walk of Fame star. I like that at the end, but it was just fucking weird, man. Yeah, I don't know. It was good. I'll give 85-90% of the movie a pretty good score, because it was pretty impressive what they accomplished and the risk they took, and nailed it. And I wonder, watching something like this, I don't know. I couldn't really tell if this was set in modern day. It was kind of dreamlike, but it seemed more 90s to me, or maybe late 90s. I don't have any touch or relation with Hollywood at all, but you have ideas of what it's like. And I wonder how many actual personalities are kind of like him behind the scenes, or have been like him, have existed, have been producers and made big decisions and done things like that and represented that kind of behavior. I would assume they're pretty common.
Yeah, I would say they're probably, as you accurately pointed out, like, is there a phase for a lot of these things? Yes, there are phases, and I don't think it's everyone, right? They would have you believe people like him was everyone in the 90s, right? All the producers, or the heyday, the golden, because 90s was another golden age. I bet there were a lot. I bet there were a lot of Weinsteins. I bet Weinstein is a piece of shit, rude, lecherous, disgusting type, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Are they all like that? I don't think they all are. I think maybe a lot are. Maybe they were. It's hard to say. I'm not in it. How about that? I don't know. I shouldn't say. I'm not sure. But I don't like it's 2025 and we'll do diversity only when it suits us, right? But when it does, it's suddenly we've made an entirely white movie, because you're supposed to look all the mean white guys are all bad. Where's the diversity in that scene or any of those scenes? You get my point. It's diversity when it's convenient.
I understand. It could have been the corporate structure of Hollywood at that time. Could have been.
Yeah. So,
I understand what you're saying, man. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know you're playing what the other side would say, even though it's like a third layer to this all.
Let's get on to a number.
Man, I've been thinking the whole time. I've been going back and forth on the call, but I'm just gonna go. 7. Oh man, 7-7.
Okay, you and I agree. That's what I have written down right in front of me before you said it. That's a good score for a movie like this. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about this, but I maybe there's some truth to it. I could actually Google it right now. This is nominated for an Academy Award, I believe, for best picture.
I didn't know that.
Okay, let me double check on that, because if that's true, that's kind of unprecedented, because usually that Academy snubs that kind of gory shit. But let's see here, 2025 Oscar nomination list. I know Demi Moore is nominated. That's cool. Yeah, I understand what you're saying with her performance and whether you could argue if it deserves it. But I will say this. The one thing that, to hearken, yeah, it's nominated for Best Picture. The Substance, there it is. Pretty crazy. But, okay. Strange Dark.
I'm sorry, I got to say this now.
Yeah.
It's our podcast. It's not surprising, okay? It's a white man bad, female written and directed French woman. So, no, it doesn't surprise me in even the tiniest. And it's all about the exploitation of women. So
okay,
I am not surprised at all.
Yeah, well, maybe that's an interesting point that you bring up, and maybe there's that relation to the fact that Strange Darling was completely snubbed, all up and down. There's no mention of it. No, who got snubbed. It's not an article, and I'll die on that hill all day as far as Strange Darling deserving acting and Best Picture nominations. And even
you do really realize these Academy Awards. I think you know this, right? There literally is a list of things you must have. You know that, right?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which really sucks, because I think it would make for such an interesting award show if it was unbiased in that respect.